Okay, welcome everybody to this edition of SpunkGo webinar. Now, if this is your first time attending this webinar, we are a non-profit organization and we are into doing good with social media. We are an all-girls community and we are based in 20 countries worldwide. We are currently being crowdfunded by ifoundwomen.com. If you want to know more about SpunkGo, you can visit our website, www.spunkgo.com. Now, joining us today is our guest speaker. She's an amazing super woman. And when I say amazing, I mean it. She is a global senior executive and entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience in the fields of strategic communication, partnerships, humanitarian protection, and sustainable development. She's not only a career woman, she's also a mother of 2 strong boys. She is driven by purpose and social impact. And she's here to share with us some valuable insights on building a career around social impact organizations. She draws her personal experience from the United Nations. I think I didn't mention it, she once worked for the United Nations. And she also draws her experience too from private sector and as a social entrepreneur. Now, let me remind you, as you listen to her story, you will notice, I hope everybody's hearing me. You will notice some power in your own voice as a young girl or young woman growing up. Now, without much talk, I would like to give this platform to our guest speaker, Noha Hefny. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Violetta, for the wonderful introduction. I'm very honored and I'm humbled by everything you said. At the end of the day, I or anything else. And all those lists of achievements that we find in people's CVs and in their journeys, are honestly worth nothing. That person has good values and is in service of others and of humanity. And this is what I believe. So I'm very happy to have been invited to speak to all of you today. Okay, so I hope that everyone can hear me now. Just can you confirm anyone by doing this? Okay, excellent. So basically, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here. And, it's my journey starts from the age of 13 years old. And so today's presentation is really going to be not just a career story, but a life story. Because when we talk about social impact, there is no avoidance of merging that with our life. Because if you decide to take a career in social impact, then it is very important to believe in what you do, to have values that align with that particular field so you can be in service effectively. So I wanted to start by sharing 2 quotes that really inspired my journey. And the first one is that at the end of the day, the week, or the end of my life even, I want to be able to say that I contributed more than I criticized. And I'm sharing this because, the magnitude of challenges and problems that are surrounding us in our societies, in our countries, in the world is significant. It's problems continue to happen, to escalate. There are so many pressing challenges that humanity has to confront. But at the end, instead of standing by and looking at those challenging and think, oh my God, this is so bad, this is so negative, I think we each have a role to play and a role to contribute in order to solve those challenges. The other thing that I truly believe and that has inspired my entire career and enabled me to succeed is that I believe spiritually that God has given each and every one of us unique gifts and talents. And the quote that inspires me here on this note is that when I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say that I used every single gift and talent that I was given in my mission on earth. So to start off, these two quotes, being in service, being proactive at solving problems, and last but not least, using our resources to give back to the community, to the world, to the societies that we live in, really critically important. So I'll move on to my career trajectory, and Violetta, described some of the organizations I worked for very effectively. But let me just tell you briefly my entire career trajectory, if you like. So I started my career with the UNHCR, which is the United Nations Refugee Agency. I also worked as a consultant for UNESCO, the education agency. I pivoted into the private sector at PepsiCo, where I was handling communications and social responsibility, also social impact. And then I worked for McKinsey and Company as the director of comms for Eastern Europe, Middle East, Africa. And I worked for UN Women as a senior consultant for partnerships and comms. And then I decided to pivot with my career to actually create the future that I would like to see in the world. So I became a social entrepreneur, and I started three ventures. The first one is called Lit. It doesn't appear here, and I'll explain why shortly. And the second is She's Arab, which is a dedicated platform that addresses the underrepresentation of Arab women in leadership and in speaking panels. And last but not least, today I founded and I'm in the process of launching People of Impact. So, having said that, I have several mottos that I live by in my career. One is to have passion. I cannot do any job that I'm asked to do if I'm not passionate about it. Yes, sometimes we are tasked with jobs that are not necessarily exciting for us, and I do those. But generally, I have to align my passion with the job that I am selecting to join, or my passion with the company that I'm selecting to join. And by doing that, I ensure in my life that I'm doing things that I love to do. So it's very important when choosing your career to really identify what your passion is. What do you love to do? What is your unique skill set that you stand out for? And to really go after opportunities that will make you wake up inspired in the morning to go to work. The second thing is really always thinking about, can I add value? How can I add value? What is my impact in this particular job or opportunity? And by asking those questions, again, it is most likely you can succeed. Know how you can contribute, if you know what are your unique strengths that you can add to a given job, you will definitely succeed. And lastly, when you are in that particular opportunity, project, job, delivering impact. The other thing is really about leading with purpose. And I think, purpose is very inspiring. And for me, it is that one aspect or factor that gives me the internal or intrinsic motivation to continue on my journey. So when there are down times in my journey, what inspires me to move forward and not to be discouraged and actually to be resilient is really to look at what is my purpose, something greater than myself that I aspire to achieve. And in my case, it's really been social impact since I was 13. I didn't know it for a long time, but with the years going along, I discovered that this is really my impact, this is really my purpose. And this is where I can also add the most value.
Welcome to Emirates Driving Institute. The objective of this lecture is to understand the technique.
Okay, so another aspect and motto is really staying real and authentic. So, oftentimes there is a lot of societal pressure by peers, by coworkers, by family even, to be someone that we're not, to act in a way that doesn't align with who we truly are. But staying real and staying authentic has taught me that, this is when we can mobilize support for our ideas and thrive in any field of work that we end up in. The other thing is being fearless with your values. Values is the one factor that I believe should never be compromised. So, for instance, this is the compass that has guided my decisions to stay in a job or to leave a job. It's also the compass that has helped me decide for the opportunities that are suitable for me or not. And I'm fearless when it comes to the values. If I feel that a situation or a relationship compromises my values, I actually either, I tackle it head on, and I make a decisive, bold decision on how I move forward from this situation. Embracing change, as we all have seen, from the pandemic, and even before that, the world again is a world that is confronted with constant change, unpredictability, uncertainty. And so this requires resilience. And for resilience to happen, we need to have a positive mindset. We need to have a growth mindset. We need to look ahead towards the future. We need to inspire ourselves internally. And I think there are numerous ways to do that. And last but not least, one of my most important motives has been how to leave a mark, how to build towards my legacy. And as I stand, or speak to you today, I have not achieved my legacy. With all the achievements that I have, I think I only scratched the surface, and there is still a long way for me to realize that. But as I grow up beyond my 40s, I am thinking how I can actually leave something behind to humanity, to others, and how that can be carried on. Having said that, when you look at the career trajectory, you think, oh my God, she's worked in big organizations, multinationals, United Nations, she started all her businesses, and it sounds very, it sounds like a constant straight curve. But what I wanted to say is that every career trajectory has its ups and downs. There are times when we are at the peak of success, and others where there is a drop or a pause in our journey. And during those times is where we need to rely on our resilience and values to persevere. So I had to say this because there were moments in my career where I didn't, I couldn't find, for example, the right position to move into. There were times where I, for example, was waiting for a promotion and it took very long. So again, how I motivated myself goes back to my purpose, goes back to my passion, and continuously knowing how I add value and deliver impact. So if I didn't love the work that I did, I don't know, I think it would have been a completely different path. So let's look at, carving your career and social impact. So I actually grew up in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I lived there from 1989 all the way to 1994 or 95. And I was living in a big house, but outside my door were these houses, made out of metal sheets, where the children did not have shoes. They didn't have electricity to complete their studies in the evening. The women could not cook, and so on and so forth. And every day when I walked out of my house, I saw the children, I saw the women, I saw the men, and their clothes were in really bad shape, and so much poverty, if you like, just outside of my doorstep. And so this is when my purpose was ignited, and I knew that I had a role to play and to contribute to solving these problems, to alleviating the suffering of all these people. So fast forward to 1997, after I graduated from high school, I attended the American University in Cairo, and I chose to study international relations. And I graduated in 2001. And my career journey began with the UN Refugee Agency. And here I want to pause to raise a little bit of awareness on the plight of refugees. So globally, there are 79.5 million forcibly displaced people around the world, out of which 26 million are refugees. 4.2 million are currently seeking asylum, and 45.7 are internally displaced within their own countries. So when you look at these numbers, they are significant. They require collaboration at all levels. They require each and every one of us, individuals, private sector, government, civil society, to play a role in providing these refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants with their rights. I pivoted. So when I started with UNHCR, I was actually conducting refugee status determination interviews. I would go to ports of entry in different countries and interview asylum seekers seeking asylum to determine whether they fit the criteria to be accepted as refugees or not. On another level, I was also working with governments and with NGOs, nonprofits, to actually ensure that, you know, the international protection of refugees, in the sense that how can we guarantee their right to an education, to healthcare, ensuring that they have a shelter. I worked as a focal point for unaccompanied minors who arrive in a host country unaccompanied, without their family, or with women who are survivors of violence. And all of this, again, just early on in my career, gave me a very broad view of the world and of certain situations that people like you and I, some are lawyers, teachers, doctors, you know, could encounter as a result of conflict, war, and atrocities. So after working on refugee status determination in Egypt, I moved to Gadaref, East Sudan, and I worked there in a refugee camp supporting Eritrean refugees to repatriate voluntarily to their country after a peace agreement. I also worked in 2004 in Tindouf, which is in the south of Algeria, where I worked with Sahrawi refugees, reuniting them with their families in the south of Morocco due to separation by conflict for more than 35 years. So imagine being in those humanitarian operations, and imagine a mother who hasn't seen her son for more than 20 years or 35 years. It's the reuniting, you know, brought a lot of emotion, but I also felt that it was one of the most worthwhile operations that I was in. And I used to take around 50 people from the camps in south of Algeria on a Friday on a UN military plane, because it was a peacekeeping operation that I worked on. And I would take them to the other side of the border to the south of Morocco to visit their family members there after tracing them, because many of these people, their addresses had changed and so on. So again, that was very fulfilling work that I had done. I went back to Egypt, continued working for UNHCR. I was sent to Tunisia as well. At some point, I worked in Tunis on refugee protection, trying to bring the office there to the global standards of UNHCR globally and supporting refugee status determination and protection. And again, when I went back to Egypt, I joined UNESCO, and this is where I started consulting on education. And in this role, it was mainly drafting the national strategy for Egypt on education, editing it. And I was quite junior at the time, so I wasn't the author of that, education strategy, but I was exposed to working with leading experts from UNESCO and other entities to ensure that we submit a high-level document to the government. I then pivoted into the private sector, where I worked at PepsiCo, and I was behind driving PepsiCo's sustainability strategy, and I headed social responsibility for the Middle East and Africa. And there, you know, the agenda was focused mainly on reducing our environmental footprint, reducing water and energy use in operations, developing talent and ensuring education for employment, and last but not least, advancing health and wellness. And here, you know, I had the fortune to work with different leaders who truly believed in sustainability under the leadership of Indra Nooyi, who currently retired from PepsiCo, but, you know, she was one of the visionaries who really recognized that as companies, we are stewards and we have an opportunity not only to make profit, but to do that in a way that makes a difference in the world. And as a result of all my experience today, this is what I integrate in my business. I marry and I integrate profit and purpose in order to deliver shared value for all stakeholders. So again, at PepsiCo, there were multiple social impact problems and programs that I addressed and worked on. So one of which I'm very passionate about, that I managed to take to Egypt, Yemen, and also to advocate for it to scale around multiple countries globally. It's called Liter of Light. And I'll show you a video now of what it's all about.
Audio Jungle.
بالليل ما نستطيع نخرج لأنه ظلمي، لا كهرباء ولا حاجة معنا، بداخل مظلم خارج مظلم، بالا نعم حتى العشاء والله العظيم كنا بعض الأيام ما نتعشى من الظلام.
من المغرب لأنه ما يقدرش يخرجوا برا الشارع أبدا. أنت إذا خرجت من هنا تظلمي، غرفة داخلية ما نقدرش ندخلها إلا بضوء.
أنا رجاء محمد مقبل السلامي، أدرس في مدرسة المعرفة الصف السابع. لما كنت أشتي أذاكر بنزل كشافة لبيت عمي أشحنها عشان العشي أقدر أذاكر.
Audio Jungle.
لتر من نور من المشاريع النبيلة اللي بتنفذها شركة بيبسيكو حول العالم، واللي اليوم احنا كيمنيين بنفخر ان احنا بننفذها في اليمن بالشراكة مع شركة مشروعات الصناعية اليمنية ومؤسسة همة شباب للتنمية.
لتر من نور عبارة عن مشروع بنجمع فيه العبوات البلاستيكية، بنضيف لها تكنولوجيا تبع الليد، وبنحاول بنهاية المطاف ان احنا نطلع فعلا بإنارة تضيء المنازل، تضيء المناطق المجاورة.
Yemen is the perfect place to roll out this project. The project is not just about recycling plastic bottles or lighting homes. It is also a project that empowers the community to come together through education, training, and a spirit of unity.
So I'll stop there because mostly it's in Arabic, but as you've heard from me in the English part, you know, this is a project that uses plastic bottles. We collect them, we recycle them, and we turn them into solar lights to light villages in disadvantaged communities. And as I mentioned, this project was initiated in the Philippines, but ended up rolling out around more than 20 countries. And I was very happy to be a part of that. And this is where, you know, having a social impact career, you know, sort of gives you a different level of fulfillment when you feel you can make a difference, because ultimately, you know, villages that were dark were now lit with women and children able to walk in the street safely in the evening, children again able to do their homework, women able to cook in the light, because these in the slums, you know, and village, you know, some villages, you know, there is no electricity. And today across the world, I just want to say that 1.2 billion people don't have access to electricity. So this project was awarded within PepsiCo one of the sustainability awards. And I wanted to say also, as part of driving your career in general, not just in social impact, I think partnerships internally within your company or organization is critically important for your success. Building your networks, you know, networking with different professionals, even through LinkedIn, etc. It's critically important, and it was a pivotal part of my own success. The second thing is to always have respect and refinement in the way that we deal with others, even when there is disagreement, even when there is conflict, or even when you want to leave a certain opportunity or job, diplomacy and tact. And actually, this is a picture from my farewell party at PepsiCo, and where again, I was able to move on to my next opportunity. And due to the amazing partnerships that I had internally and externally, you know, I had a huge celebration for my farewell. And, you know, until now, I look at these pictures and it's heartwarming, the amount of achievement, the amount of positive partnerships, and a network that, you know, some of which are still friends and colleagues and peers and partners in the future as well. At UN Women, I got to work on projects to drive gender equality. And mainly I was handling communications. So this is an example of an advocacy and communication campaign that we did where we lit the world's tallest building, Burj Khalifa. We dimmed its lights by half to demonstrate the power lost by half of the world population, women. And I was so, again, fortunate to be under the Burj, making sure that this campaign is implemented in the right way to raise awareness on the role, the important role of men in stepping up the efforts towards gender equality and championing gender equality, but also the need for consolidated action and concerted efforts to drive gender equality forward. One thing that I also want to leave you with is, the importance of volunteering in a social impact career. So throughout my journey, I can tell you that many of the jobs I got, working for UNHCR, I started off as a volunteer. Working for UN Women, I started off as a volunteer. But also in between different jobs that I had, even when I was in the private sector, I volunteered to give my skills to programs that I was passionate about in the field of women empowerment, youth empowerment, etc. So volunteering opens doors and opportunities along the way. It opens networks. It allows you also to give back positively and to gain new skills. So I strongly encourage it. I also, on a lighter note, would like to encourage you to celebrate your achievements. When you get an award, when you get recognized, even if you get an email with a positive recognition, store these things and use them when you're feeling down to inspire yourself and to keep moving forward in your journey. Because the field of social impact is one that has many challenges. It's one that has many complex problems, and we constantly need to be recognizing how much of our effort, energy, and contribution we are making and celebrating that. Have a voice and be a thought leader. So if you're passionate about hunger, talk about hunger. Express your views, express it from the heart, be real, be authentic, share your stories. In my case, I had a voice on women's economic empowerment, women's leadership, and also about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I encourage you to do the same, to advocate, to be a thought leader, and to raise your voice in order to advance sustainable development. And lastly, to wrap this up with my entrepreneurship journey, I want to say that if you want to predict the future, create it. Some of these problems traditionally stagnate and solutions don't come about very quickly. So if you have an idea or an innovation that can solve a complex societal problem, this is when you have to think and consider of becoming a social entrepreneur. So in my case, I started She Is Arab with one of my friends and partners, Samar, that you see here in the picture. And as you can see, we were covered in several media as the brand new platform inspiring Arab women. And what we created is a company that delivers multiple services. One is a network for women to collaborate and exchange views. The second is an advisory service that advises organizations on gender equality. Thirdly, a speaker bureau. And lastly, a training and development arm that allows women to enhance their public speaking. So again, I think, the business is now continuing with Samar as its leader because I have moved on to establish a new venture, but I'll show you also what it was all about and why we created it. So She's Arab was created to reverse the stereotypes about Arab women around the world, and not just with Arab women, but with women in general. There are many stereotypes about Asian women, African women, Arab women. So we decided to create a platform that will give the opportunity for the Arab women, in this case, to come up and tell their stories in their own voice, to actually, gather the thinkers, the intellectuals, the academics, the doctors, the engineers, all on one platform where they can collaborate with women around the world and hopefully reverse the stereotypes against them. So, She's Arab went beyond just that mission and vision, which we started with, and it went beyond becoming a speakers platform into becoming an entire training and development advisory company as well for organizations on gender equality. So one framework that has guided my work and my action throughout my 20 years career has been the Sustainable Development Goals. Before that, it was called the Millennium Development Goals. So that's why I say throughout my career. But at the end of the day, this is developed by the UN and adopted by all member states almost. And it captures 17 goals to transform humanity, including eradication of poverty, hunger, health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, etc. And I think it's very important that if you are interested in social impact, that you familiarize with the Sustainable Development Goals. And even if you're not, I think it's important to learn and gain awareness about it, because you can drive and contribute to humanity's transformation by adopting action around those goals. And I think with SpunkGo, it's a live example of how you are all contributing to that. So I just wanted to share that in every experience, whether it was private sector, entrepreneurship, or obviously with the UN, I ensured to integrate and align my strategies, my plans with the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm almost around to wrap up. I think, how am I on time, Violetta? Oh, okay. I can't hear you, but it's okay. I'll carry on. So around the
Hello. Okay. Hello.
Hi. Just
Yeah.
How we are on the time?
Oh, you are right on point. It is like 39 minutes.
Okay, excellent.
So yeah.
I'll wrap up soon though. So
Okay.
So what I wanted to say about the SDGs is that all the issues that are being tackled by the SDGs, most of them have regressed as a result of the pandemic, and the majority of those impacted are women. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 25 million refugees around the world, but we also have 690 million people who go hungry to bed each night. I also mentioned the number 1.2 billion with no access to electricity, and we have 800 million people or more with no access to clean drinking water. So again, these numbers are staggering, and I encourage all of you to take an active role in addressing that. In terms of leadership, there is a model that I refer to a lot throughout my journey. It's called the VUCA Prime model. And, it's very simple. Everything is about mindset and transforming the way you think and you perceive different things, and also adopting new behaviors. So in order to address the VUCA world, which is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, it is important to turn in your mind the volatility into vision. Develop a vision on where you want to go forward as a person and as a professional. Secondly, uncertainty. The uncertainty can be turned into understanding. And what they mean here by understanding is having clarity on the dynamics, the external environment. What are the trends happening around us? And, enabling us to feel comfortable with the uncertainty. Okay. The complexity can be turned into clarity. So, you need to be clear what you're working within. So before you take on a project, a new relationship, a job, understand the surrounding environment, understand what are you working with, what are you getting into, study it, ask questions, We have to do that. When I was much younger, I used to be a little bit impulsive and I would jump on opportunities just by the sound of it. Today, I actually ask a lot of questions and I collaborate and I try to collect insights from people across different roles or those in the industry that I'm trying to enter or organization. And so that's very important to have clarity. And last but not least, the ambiguity is always there. The future is unpredictable. The circumstances keep changing. There's a lot of uncertainty. So we need agility. And by agility, we need to be focused on what truly matters. So while I was launching my different ventures, you know, I had like right now, for example, I'm a solo entrepreneur and I'm launching People of Impact. And, you know, there's so many things to do, from marketing to finance to legal to operations. However, I need to be agile. So how can you be agile? You need to choose one thing at a time to focus your attention on and to prioritize. Once you complete it, move to the next task. And by doing that, you will not confuse yourself or overwhelm yourself. But if you try to work on everything at the same time, you know, some of the tasks you have might drop. So again, in social impact, this applies as well, the agility. But here, what we prioritize, you know, unlike in business where we prioritize activities that will deliver profit, in social impact, we prioritize to focus on the needs of the most vulnerable, to focus on activities that will save those who most need us. So it's very important always to remember that. So now in closing, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I am launching a new venture called People of Impact. And what it is, it's an ecosystem for advancing you know, humanity, advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, I haven't launched, but I'll give you all a SpunkGo, a special sneak peek into a video that describes what my ecosystem is all about and what's coming up in the next couple of months. However, please, don't tell anyone that I did this. But I'm excited to share it with all of you because there will be many parts of it that touch on youth and the youth mindset. So the platform is still under construction, but it's launching. It's an ecosystem. It's a community, online, membership-based, that is going to drive awareness and advocacy on social causes. It will enable people from all walks of life, regardless of whether they work for the UN or the private sector or an NGO or not, to actually ideate and innovate solutions for sustainable development challenges. It will offer capacity building and training to NGOs and social enterprises in order to enable them, because I believe that they are the people of impact, the social innovators and the NGOs. And I decided to build this as a result of having seen and witnessed social impact across 3 different sectors and trying to drive collaboration and trying to really drive Sustainable Development Goal 17, which is about partnerships, and also others like the ones on innovation. Because I believe that, you know, in the collective power of ideas, and I believe in the collective intelligence of all in solving these problems, and particularly engaging local communities in the search for different solutions. So this is what People of Impact is going to be all about. And last, I wanted to close by saying, while being very passionate and purpose-driven and authentic and addressing social impact or carving your path in a career in social impact, always place your family first. Always remember to spend time with those that you love the most, because these are precious times that can never be repeated. And here, you know, this is my family, my parents, my sisters. We are 3 girls in the family. This is my mother that inspires all my values and always encouraged me to persevere in my journey. But also I have my own family as well now with my 2 boys and my husband. So we also make sure to carve time to spend time together and have loads of fun, because at the end of the day, you know, you only live once. So yes, work hard, but also play hard and enjoy your time. And last but not least, again, with a career in social impact, but also in other fields, you know, we tend to be drained. We tend to forget eating, sleeping. We have long nights. We want to be in service. We want to help the whole of humanity. Remember to self-care, because primarily, if you cannot be resilient with your own energy and your own personal resources, you will not be able to serve those that you want to serve in the future. So please self-care, whatever it means to you. For me, it's this is a picture from Bali, where I took a trip to do yoga and meditation. That was my way of taking a harsh break. But whatever it means to you, you know, please ensure to incorporate that in any career that you try to undertake and in your life as a habit. So finally, I would say that this is your legacy on this earth. When you leave this earth, you need to think of how many hearts have you touched. And this is how, you know, I inspire myself. I try to influence and touch the hearts of anyone that I interact with, no matter, you know, if it's someone in a supermarket or on the street, all the way to people in a work setting. It's very important to touch hearts. It's very important to be positive, to inspire people, to touch their lives in a meaningful way for them. And being relevant, you know, and being sensitive, considerate, compassionate, empathetic, it's very important. These are qualities that we all require in this post-pandemic world and in the future, if we want to have resilient societies. And on this note, I also wanted to say why the self-care is also important is because any change starts with you. So we need you to be well and healthy and mentally and physically. So it's very important. And that's it. So that brings me to the end of it. And I thank you all so much for bearing with me this long and listening to my presentation about my career and life journey. And I'd be really happy to take any of your questions. And I also wanted to say that feel free to connect with me directly if you want to have a discussion about social impact, or if you have questions about your career. I'm very accessible on LinkedIn, and I'd be more than delighted to support the SpunkGo girls and boys. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you so much. We've been inspired. I think through this, I've fallen in love with your whole agenda and with you as a person. Please, if you have any questions, please do that in the chat feature on Zoom. I think we have a lot of questions for you in the chat feature. So if you could kindly answer them for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'll start from the top, yeah? I'll go.
Okay.
All right, so the first question is, what is your view on people's response to the coronavirus vaccine? So I think around the world, we have seen different responses and attitudes. And this question is particularly about people. So I think, in my experience with my community, I've seen many people taking responsibility to protect themselves and others from the virus. following the guidelines, following the precautions, but I've also seen others who don't really have the same concerns, right? I've seen people rushing to take the vaccine while others are also debating and, thinking twice about it. And I think here I cannot judge individuals. It's really not my place to do so. But what I can say is what we are facing is unprecedented. We, as humanity, have not confronted any challenge of this magnitude. And I urge everyone, regardless of your belief and how you go about your daily life in protecting yourselves and others, to actually think of us all as a community, as a collective. As humanity, we are a collective, and the action of one will impact the lives of many. So please, let's keep that in mind. And this is how I would answer this question. What would you say was the biggest turning point in your life? For me, there were several, and these are moments of optimism, but also fear. So I would say optimism and fear came with my first child, because all of a sudden I found myself a mother, and I found myself, with a little boy, and it's actually a huge responsibility. And everything I used to do and the way I behave and act is something that this boy will mimic, will copy, will model. And so here comes a great responsibility. And to be honest, I had no experience with motherhood. I had more career experience than how to be a mother. And I had to sort of explore the best way of parenting for my children that would work with my values, with my vision for them in the future. And obviously it's very important for me to raise, global citizens that are also eager to serve the community. So what I did is I used to take my children when they were very young, at the age of 4, to distribute water to workers in the community, food during the month of Ramadan. They would place food in fridges that were installed in the street, so that, to offer their support, again, for labor workers, and many other activities. I took them to centers for special needs. So I would say that while this was the biggest turning point, having children, it was also the biggest opportunity to leave my mark and to build a positive legacy, because in the direct impact that I can have and that I realize I can have is directly on those in my direct community and circle, which is my family. So I start from there. Another turning point is leaving the corporate world and deciding to become a social entrepreneur. And here I can share a quick story, which is I was offered 2 job offers in March 2019, when we were starting She is Arab with my friend and partner. And at that time, I had to make a very difficult decision, because one of the offers I got was from a private sector, multinational, global dream company. And they wanted me to become their director of communications for the region. And another offer was from an international organization who wanted me to join their ranks on a not as a consultant, but on a full-time basis. And at the same time, I had applied with my partner to an incubator to launch She's Arab. And I had the tough choice to say, do I want to work in international organizations, or do I want to join the private sector again? Or do I take a leap of faith and jump into social entrepreneurship and shape, the women's agenda, the youth agenda, and others myself? And what I realized at that time, and it was one of the most difficult choices I had to make, because basically, with the private sector type of opportunity comes also a lot of benefits, financial generous packages, rewards, growth, collaboration with amazing brains and people. With the international organizations, you work with some of the leading experts around the world on major challenges that I'm really interested to also solve. So I plunged and I made that choice of becoming an entrepreneur. And that was a turning point, because when you become an entrepreneur after having a very stable career of, 17 years at the time, it's, you're basically going into, unknown land, and after having a team and resources to drive my different agendas within the organizations I worked for, I was alone. We were two partners building a venture from ground zero, but we did it and we were resilient. And again, the main reason is belief and passion for what we want to do. So this was a very difficult decision. Can we join as volunteers in the UN while we are doing undergrad? I believe you can basically do internships within UN offices. To become an official UN volunteer, I think you have to be a university graduate. When I went to East Sudan, I was an international volunteer, and they require at least a certain age, I think, to do that. So I think for volunteering as on the official roster of UNV, where you can check the website unv.org, you actually do need to complete your university. However, I think if you approached some of the UN officials on LinkedIn or offices, they might agree also to take you in as a volunteer. Thank you for the mention about the session. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. It says, what was your main motivation to go into the sector? So I covered that in my presentation when I was talking about Ethiopia. While living there, this is where I started realizing that there are inequalities in the world, that the life that I live is really privileged, that there are people who don't have the equal chances that I get. And I was only 13 or 14 years old at the time. And this is why it stuck to me. I think that seeing those images at that age, the poverty, just made me feel that there is a difference as a child between me and my neighbor, regardless of who they are. I didn't have, I think, an understanding about different classes and all of that complicated stuff now. But at that time, that image just stayed with me for the rest of my life until today. And hence why I'm building a network now that can enable people to collaborate, to advance social impact, and to help any cause that they feel passionate about. Okay. What are your goals for the future of your ventures? So I really dream that People of Impact will end up being a large global network with a social innovation lab that can bring social impact ventures and ideas to life, and that I would secure sufficient funds from different investors and even from myself if I become a rich woman one day through my ventures to actually fund the ideas of youth and anybody that wants to make a difference and an impact in society. So, I dream of being able to do that, building a social innovation lab, inspiring youth to shape the future, bringing innovation to the sector because it's very traditional. So, it kind of like, a lot of ideas are being recycled. So bringing innovation, design thinking, human-centric design to the coming up of solutions for social impact, advocating for the right causes. And really, it's about mainstreaming or, mainstreaming social impact in the sense that all of us as human beings, our core values are to give back, are about kindness and empathy. And so I want to ignite that spirit in my peer and fellow humans. And by launching this network, it allows me, to bring people together to drive the collective action that we need and hopefully grow into a think tank, an innovation lab, and a supportive platform for anyone interested in social impact. Lots of us from Africa are so thrilled to hear about your experiences. Do you think we have some advantages in Africa that we can turn into an advantage? I think absolutely. So not only, so first of all, I am Egyptian, so I'm African, so I'm very passionate about Africa. Second, I grew up in Ethiopia for 6 years. And lastly, my entire career had either visits to Africa or projects that I worked on that touched or affected African countries. And I think what I find is, there is a big momentum for entrepreneurship in Africa. And I think, this has to be capitalized on. I think there's a lot of energy, dynamism, drive amongst the youth that can really transform the continent. And I think it's up to all of you, if you have an idea, to go start it. And don't be afraid that you do not have sufficient funds or support. Start somewhere small and your idea will amplify and will grow. The second thing, I think this is an amazing space for social entrepreneurship, because still, there is a ground there's a lot of space to innovate for impact in Africa and to advance the SDGs. So again, accelerating that effort is very important. I think the resources of Africa as well. There is a wealth of resources, natural resources that can be leveraged for the economic growth of the continent. And I think we need more visibility for African businesses, for African women, for African youth, all the great stuff that is happening. But I also think that we need, conflict resolution, mediation in areas of the continent that are facing these issues. And but I think that the youth, for me, are the ones who are going to shape a brighter future for the continent. And that can be realized through social entrepreneurship, by being proactive, by creating your own future and by shaping it through innovative ideas that improve the environment, improve the society, and improve and promote the culture of Africa and uses its resources in a positive way. As a young woman in Addis, I would like to say after the program, if you can mention, okay. So my social media, I think the best way to reach me is to connect with me on LinkedIn, as I mentioned. It's my name, Noha Hefny. This is the same account. Okay, Sharon, you're asking about organizations you can join. Please also send me that question by LinkedIn. I will send you a couple of links for organizations that you can support your community. In terms of work opportunities, I don't know what's available in your country, but please connect with me for a very short call. Maybe I can mentor or advise you on how to go about finding a social impact job. How do I approach influential people around me to help and favor the vulnerable in my community? Very good question. I think so. For that one, the question is, how can I get influential people to support social impact? So here, it's not only influential people. So it's influential people, it's businesses that have good budgets that can support the community. It's impact investors who are interested in causes. So here, whenever you're approaching any stakeholder, whoever it may be, an individual, a company, a philanthropist, an impact investor, you need to be relevant. You need to touch the hearts and the emotional. You need to create an emotional connection between you and that person and that cause that you are trying to advocate. The second thing, besides being relational and establishing that connection, you need to speak with passion. The third is to use data and insights. So when I spoke to you about refugees or about Liter of Light, the project that addresses the solar lighting solutions, I gave you numbers. I gave you numbers about the number of people who are displaced, refugees, etc. So use numbers, use data, use insights to build your case on why they should support you. And then, show the impact. Show the impact of your initiative, whatever it may be. How is that going to impact that person, the community, the economy, the country, and ultimately the world? And go from general to specific or vice versa. But you need to show impact. You need to show backing facts through data and insights. And you also need to show how your project or your cause is sustainable. How are you going to make it scalable on the long term? How is it going to not be interrupted? How can it grow? So these are all ways to really convince different stakeholders to support different social causes. You know, show the data, show the facts, show the impact, show the scalability and the sustainability of your initiative. Okay, how do I join UN volunteer? There is a website called unv.org. You can Google it, and there is an application to fill, which enables you to be included on a roster for that, and also connect with UNV officers in your country. So in every country there is, maybe, I'm not sure in every country, but in most countries there are UNV offices, so you can approach them and offer your skills and see how to apply. Okay. I'm Ramlat from Tanzania, a feminist. I was able to volunteer 8 years ago. Right now, I have an initiative to deal with gender, environment, life skills, and leadership, but I don't know where I can go to get a donor. I have already had a project about girls, which helps a girl who dropped out of school with child pregnancy, fee, and menstruation, who can help me to grow our girls in my country and to support them. Okay, again, this is a very specific case, so I would recommend to connect with me on LinkedIn for advice. I think you have to apply for grants that are offered by different donors and different organizations worldwide. The other thing that you can do is apply for social entrepreneurship competitions that can recognize your idea and also provide it with funding. Another way, which is the really quick answer, is to do crowdfunding. So put your initiative on a crowdfunding platform and try to get support and funding for it. I hope this answers your question. So that brings me to the end of the questions on the chat. And are there any other questions? Anyone wants to open the mic and even comments? Okay.
Thank you so much, Noha, for this very passionate and inspirational session. And thank you to the audience too for participating. If you need any information or want to participate in SpunkGo, please visit our website, www.spunkgo.com. This is Netra, the founder. Thank you so much, Noha, and good evening to everyone.
Thank you so much, Netra and Violeta, for the amazing facilitation, and Netra for the invitation. I'm very impressed by all of you, and I'm really also impressed by the level of engagement. This is one of the most interesting sessions that I've had I would say by far in 2021 and end of 2020. I'm really excited to explore, how we can work together as SpunkGo and People of Impact, and how I can personally support you. And I wish you all a great day, evening, wherever you are in the world, afternoon. Okay, thank you.